Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Arsenal Vision podcast canceled and rendered irrelevant now that Tony Gale has already spent 90 minutes complaining about the performance. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. That's right. How the hell are we going to complain for 90 minutes about a win when Tony Gale spent 90 minutes complaining about our win? If you are not familiar with this, that means you might have been at the game or had the good fortune of not listening to Tony Gale do the Tony Gale, which is basically to rant incessantly, get names wrong, get facts and details wrong, and basically suggest that the one really horror challenge in the match, which was Troy Deeney's, was not only not a red card and not a yellow card, but not even a foul, and that the game is gone. Of course it has. Thanks, Tony. In any event, there are things we can still complain about that he didn't get to, and we will try to do that, and maybe even celebrate another win on the way to Project 24. I am reliably informed that is Clive's invention, despite Scott's every effort to steal it. And here to answer for himself is Scott. You can find him on Twitter at _that_crab. Hello, Scott.
Good morning. Howdy.
It is morning as we record this, indeed. When you are listening to it, it will most likely not be morning unless you are listening to it in the morning, in which case, good morning. Paul is here. He's on Twitter at Pausing in My Pants. Hello, Paz.
Woohoo!
Woohoo, indeed. My name is Elliot Smith, as I mentioned earlier, so I will save you the redundancies. In any event, little housekeeping. We had a halftime show. Ever since we started doing the halftime shows, we have never lost a game. You're welcome. Actually, it's not just that we haven't lost a game. It's that every time we come on the halftime show and complain about a drab first half, we go on to score at least 2 goals in the second half and win the game. You're welcome. This is the kind of thing, Paul, Scott, this is the service. And not once has someone said thank you for your service, but that's okay. We can do this anyway. Couple other things. Tim's match previews continue to be fantastic. We have a professional graphics editor now adding graphics to those as opposed to my iMovie hacks.
His name is Laszlo.
Laszlo Fulop. Yep, follow him.
Lots of accents and stuff like a designer should have.
Yeah, I mean, it is a designer's name, a designer's accented name, and also someone who's actually good at what he does. So be sure to check those out at patreon.com/Arsenal Vision Podcast. In any event, in the spotlight coming up this week on Mesut Ozil. That'll be on Patreon as well. So let's dive into the match. Paul, start with you. So, we can dig into why this didn't work, why that didn't work, what partnerships are failing, yada, yada, yada. But this could have been so much different. I think one thing that seems pretty clear to me with the way Emery has us set up is that we are, especially against these smaller teams, and I'll put that in quotes because I think Watford are good. They've proven they're good this season, and this was never going to be an easy game per se, but the goal seems to be not pushing the boat out too far to get the first goal and leaving ourselves too exposed. And so that's led to some drab first halves. First goals are obviously so important to us, given our defensive frailties. The more we have to extend ourselves and stretch ourselves and open the game, the more likely we are to get hit. So the first goal being so important, we could have had it 2 separate occasions, both Lacazette. One, a penalty shout, another, a missed chip. Let's take those in order really quickly. The first one, for you said it on the halftime show, but I want to cover it again for anyone who didn't listen then. You feel he needs to go down there.
As they say in the Wire, it's all in the game, right? It's just the way the game's played at the moment. You mentioned, VAR and VAR addressing it.
And as they say in my marriage, you've got to go down.
You got to go down.
Yeah.
Do they?
I mean, my wife says it. Yeah. Yeah,
it's probably because she prefers it to you flailing about on top of her.
I mean, neither are great. Let's be honest.
Yeah, let's be honest.
This is,
it's gotten weird already.
Quick. We're like 5 minutes in here.
Scott's in the room.
At time of recording, it is like 10:45 a.m. local time. So I assure you, there's no alcohol has been consumed on my end. Anyway, Paul, let's get off my wife and get back onto.
You're on your wife. I'm on your back.
All right, can we please just talk about Lacazette's penalty shot?
Is this a devil's triangle? Oh, I'm sorry. We're not playing a drinking game. I'm sorry.
Moving on.
Devil's stack. Look, he's just got to go down on your wife. It's the way the game's played. How many times do we have to watch the team that wins the league dive all over the pitch to get penalties? Now, I think we should only dive when it's a proper tackle and a proper foul.
Well, it's not a dive then, right? It's just the choice not to fight through it, really. I mean, it's...
Exactly. It's kind of like in cricket, you appeal to the ref, right? It's basically your appeal. It says, don't play advantage. There's a real contact here. I want the fucking penalty. And unfortunately, I mean, we've seen too often the ref decides, well, maybe the contact wasn't that big. Maybe he can ride it out. It gets merged into this murkiness, and you don't force him to make a call. Force him to make a call. You're punishing your team. I'm not being hard on Lacazette here. He's an honest guy. He's trying hard. I also think it's part of this season. He's really come back strong, physical, aggressive. I think almost there's some of that in it. He's going at defenses. He's looking to bully them, and maybe he just hasn't hit the clever switch when he needed to hear it. This was a tackle he needed to go down on because it was a real foul. Wasn't some divey, posy, deli alley anticipating a contact. It was real. It was there. Go down. Get your fucking penalty. Move your team forward. Go 1-0 up.
Yeah. I mean, it's not so much that I disagree. It's that I still think we are too easy on the refs when it comes to these kinds of situations, because and maybe this is where VAR comes in, but if refs get this right, then diving starts to go out of the game. I mean, it never goes out of the game completely.
We can't fix it. And if we could, we would have fixed it in the last 10 years when we weren't diving for penalties. I mean, Theo apologizing for his dive however many years ago and swearing he'd never dive again, and he didn't. Well, I'm not sure we haven't changed the way the game's played, so it's all in the game, as Omar will tell you.
And of course, once you go a goal up, and we saw it, and we've seen it in these past few games, the pattern of play starts to favor us significantly. But it's that first goal and the pattern of play prior to that first goal that has been problematic. So I'll stay with you just for a second, Paul, relegating Scott to the periphery of the match, sort of the way Aubameyang is, the podcast, the way Aubameyang was relegated to the periphery of the match, or Ozil or Ramsey, any of them, which we'll get to that. As far as the missed chip, I mean, he does well to nick the ball. In your mind, yeah. I mean, I think that's a situation where you probably expect him to score. In your mind, is that a sitter he's blown per se, or is that a tougher chance than people make out?
I think they're all tougher. It's the classic, you can't miss that, but you bloody can. So, I mean, it was a good little chip, but it's narrow margins. And, you got to delay it, you got to disguise it. So, yeah, he should be able to hit that. But when you're pretending you're not about to chip the keeper, you basically have a very short swing to hit it. So I just think it's 50-50. That's what I say.
And to be fair, I mean, it's only a chance that comes about from him doing good work to get on the ball and get in.
It all on his own. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So Scott, it just so happens we don't have to guess at whether you can or can't miss it. We have the sweet, cold embrace of statistics to free us from what was really an inappropriate start to the podcast. So what is the XG of that Lacazette chance?
So just a caveat in the beginning, this is probably an edge case where XG is tough, especially for chances that are this far out. So one of the biggest factors going into XG is the distance to goal and the angle. Because this shot came outside of the box, in general, those are low-quality chances. So I think this one is going to be better than what the XG says. Just wanted to get that out there. So this one actually came out as rated as a 0.22 chance. It doesn't necessarily know at this situation with the on-ball event data that this is a one-on-one with the keeper and that he doesn't have any pressure on him necessarily from other defenders. So I think, mentally you could probably bump this one up to maybe, a 40% chance or so. It's a good chance, but it's not a gimme. But, you expect your big strikers to be able to make the big plays. Sure,
and the 0.22, just for people that, are still kind of coming to grips with XG, basically means 22% of the time that kind of chance gets converted. But to Scott's point, a lot of the reason for that registering so low is the distance to goal and XG not taking into account some of the game state and position of players and things like that. So let's dive into just some of the data real quick, Scott, and then we can move into sort of more subjective analysis. But just objectively, I know your model had Watford better on XG, but you are our stats expert, so we will back your statistics always and forever in the true show of tribalism that is the world of football. What did you have the XG overall for this match?
So I had it 2.8 for Watford, 1.6 to Arsenal.
Yikes.
I've seen some, where Watford was as low as 1.9, and I've seen other ones that have gone up to almost 2.5. So in general, Watford are the better team for this. It really depends on how you rate some of the big chances that they had in the second half on, how good of chances those were. But I don't think there's really any way to say that, Watford didn't deserve to get something out of this match almost.
I mean, that is a paddling. That's a lot of chances. I think you said in your By the Numbers column for Arseblog, which everyone should read, that it was 6 big chances for Watford, which is an absolute monumental amount, the most they've had this season. As far as by half, do you happen to have the XG broken down by half?
I can kind of figure it out. So it looks like Watford was about just under 0.5 at halftime. Arsenal were basically the Lacazette chance. They were about 2.25. So everything in the second half, it was, both teams played better in the second half, at least attacking wise. But Watford generated almost all of their XG in the second half.
So let me ask you, do you buy the argument that maybe some of the reasons for our lack of fluency in attack is by design, that Emery is setting us up to play the long game, so to speak, that he trusts our supremely talented front line to eventually make something, maybe even out of nothing, but that the priority is not to concede early chances and early goals that force us to chase the game? Is that trying to find a silver lining in a cloud, or is that something that maybe both on data or what you've been seeing is supported?
Well, it does seem that Arsenal are starting out slower, so maybe it is that they're going out with an instruction to not make big mistakes. And, if you get a good goal to go ahead, that's awesome, but we're not going to go out and leave ourselves super open at the back to give these, lower teams a chance to be able to play on that deep block and not have to come out. So if you kind of keep it tight for the first half, make them come out for the second half and want to attack a little bit more, maybe things open up. So maybe it is a strategy. Maybe this is, post hoc, trying to justify our slow starts. It's hard to say, but I hope that there's something, a method to this madness, because the first half starts are a little frustrating. But that it could also be, if that penalty is called in that 4th minute, things change quite a bit. I don't know. It's hard to, go back and say this happens because of this. It's, everything is dependent on each other in soccer, so it's a tough thing to do. It
is, and I think, unfortunately, anytime you draw any conclusion, you can be accused of agenda, and ultimately, we keep winning the games, and that's the most important thing. So I want to get into this just really quickly with you, Paul. The player who seems to be the odd man out, and we'll get to Aubameyang and Ozil as well, but it is Aaron Ramsey. At this point, if this is the role, it's hard to justify his inclusion at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I feel bad for the guy. I don't think everything he did was bad. I don't even think he played badly. It's just he's kind of shown for the ball in the areas that other players are shown for the ball. And I think the manager, I hope the fact that, again, nothing against Ramsey, but I hope the fact that he yanked Ramsey early was the sign which we've been waiting for, that he's willing to cross the Rubicon, which, as you will know from your Latin history, was when Caesar decided to cross the Rubicon River, heading back towards Rome, declaring his intention to be Caesar.
I think you've confused it. I think that's the Rubik's Cube, and the Rubicon is a square thing with colored dots on it that you turn until all the dots are the same color.
Damn it, Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Anyway, moving on, yeah.
So I think the time has arrived, especially if it has the same eye on it that we do for Liverpool, the Liverpool game, that now's the time that he needs to... One can rationalize what we've done so far, if he now makes the decision. But if he continues to gently tinker, and maybe he hasn't even tinkered for a little while, in his formations, when it's clear that, we'll get to the substitutions and the Iwobi move, but it's clear that changing things up changed the game. And so one hopes we've reached that point without worrying who the names are, to get beyond the names, because we've been picking the best part of, I guess you could say, 5 names in the front 6 because we're afraid to put in if you want to call it a non-name, somebody like an Iwobi or, my God, Mkhitaryan, who's a name in his own right, but seems to be the forgotten man as always. And we just haven't knuckled down to making the choice that I think is clear to everybody. And I mean, some might say it's only to be expected with Unai Emery. I mean, this is a guy who, in his own name, has 6 vowels but only 3 consonants. And one of those 6 is a false vowel. So I don't know what you guys were expecting, but I think
as
the time
always,
has come.
You've taken some astute insight and ruined it with some pointless drivel at the end. But I am still somehow going to stay with you for one quick follow-up.
That was my signal for you to rescue me and bring it to Scott. But okay, go on.
No, I'm going to stay with you and watch you flounder in payback for your crude comments about my life partner. So is it possible that Emery has eyes, can see that the pattern of play isn't working, can see that this system is problematic, but has looked at it and said, look, I have to keep Aubameyang, Lacazette, Ramsey, Ozil all happy. These are big stars who are not going to accept being a rotational option in a club like Arsenal. They're just not. And if I make them feel that they are now a rotational option, I create a stick for my back with them. I create a problem in the dressing room. So here's what I'm going to do. I got this run of home games. I got this run of games against teams I think I can beat. I'm confident I can beat. And I'm just going to start them all in these games and make them feel that they are my first team choices, that they are, that they are getting the place befitting of their stardom and their stature. But when the games get a little harder, I'm going to use that capital I've banked, and I'm going to start rotating them out and going to lineups that are a little more balanced and get me a little more the dynamic I want. I mean, is that possible that he is building up some political capital with his big players so that when the time comes to make hard choices, they won't feel disenchanted?
I think it's a very good rationale. I think there's an additional twist, which is he mentioned something in the last week or so about players, something referring to how it's also how other players in the dressing room see the selections. In other words, players have to prove it to themselves. And I think in the negative sense, he wants the squad in general to see that a big player has played himself in or has played himself out of the selection to obviate the issues in terms of politics, ego, etc. And you could say he's proved that picking the big name front five isn't giving everybody the results they were looking for, so the team will be looking for change. And B, you can begin to separate the name or names that need to be rested to see how things work without them. So
yeah.
They're kind of proving the case for him. And it's a cat and mouse game, right? You want a manager to be decisive. On the other hand, you don't want him making problems he doesn't need to have, as you alluded to. We've had some time and we've been winning. Had we been losing these games, the Rubicon might have come a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some people that you can go on YouTube and see this who can finish a Rubicon in like 30 seconds. It's incredible. You should look up a video of that.
My best time is actually 45 seconds.
Are you serious? I've never finished a Rubicon, not once ever.
So I had a bet with my wife because she saw Justin Bieber on TV doing it and thought he was very smart, and I'm very stubborn. And I said I could learn the Rubik's Cube and do it faster than Justin Bieber.
Again, you've said it wrong. It's a Rubicon. Scott, so let's use data to support the actual arguments as opposed to whatever that was that Paul just contributed. I think it seems clear to me that whatever you think of Aubameyang, and obviously I love the guy, absolutely love him, and think he is potentially the most important player in our team who's being absolutely wasted, for the team to really tick in attack. I like that. Tick and attack. You have to get Ozil on the ball, and you have to get him involved. And that's where this formation has been letting us down. And we've had plenty of chances to see the difference from half to half when Ozil gets to play in the 10 versus out wide. So I believe you said in our Everton game, it ranked like 93rd out of 95 games you had data for in terms of his worst performances in your offensive value added metrics. I'm curious where this one came in and if there's maybe a bright line again from when he was playing on the wing versus when he moved more central.
Yeah, so there definitely is a noticeable difference in the where he played in the match. I don't have the exact ranking, but looking at the offensive value added for the match, he's back up towards the top of the list for the stats that I have. So Alexander Lacazette led the team, primarily driven by his 2 big chances that he had, but Mesut Ozil was second best on the team. So that's nice to see him back at the top, and almost all of that came in the second half. So he had 0.65, and of that, the second half it was 0.5. So it was a big night and day difference between the 2 halves on how much influence he had on the match. I think typically this would probably be in the 60th to 70th percentile. So not one of his best games, but above average.
But if you had extrapolated out and he had continued the first half numbers, it would have been down near the bottom again, right? So we can at least,
yeah, he would have exactly
right. So we can draw some conclusions that the move central and into the 10 position was a spark, an impetus for that improvement potentially. Or am I reading too much into that?
One of the things that I actually did notice is that starting the second half, there was a tactical switch where it looked like Aubameyang moved right and Ozil moved left. Almost exclusively this season, Arsenal have a attack down the left. I think almost 40% of their attacks come down the left, and I think it's like 20 down the center and then 15 down the right. So whoever's on that right really gets isolated. So in the first 45 minutes, the only real places that Ozil could get the ball were deep. So he was collecting a lot of the balls around the halfway line in the center circle. And then he was floating a little bit to the left because that's just he's attracted to the ball more than anything. So he did move left, but I mean partially I think that he is given license to roam. But he was sticking to the right more often than he was in the second half. But then in that 45 to 63 minute range, it's almost exclusively down the left. His touches move forward, and he's in that happy space for him, between the lines, and it just really looked to unlock him. And then after Ramsey went off and Iwobi came in, he did have a free roll. His touches were pretty equal between the left and the right, so his shows his average touch pretty much in the middle. But that's a little bit of a misnomer there because there wasn't a lot of touch central. It was him being able to float wherever the ball was and get involved, which is nice to see, and definitely being able to influence the game. A ton more passes. He was our leader in passes into the box, which is good to see. His overall final third passing numbers were up again, so it was a very impressive performance for me in the second half.
Yeah, and obviously getting a goal is going to influence that offensive value added as well. Obviously a big part of it. But one thing that I saw that was happening, and I'm curious if you picked up on this, it looked like we were doing something I don't think I'd seen us do before, and that is that Xhaka and Torreira at times were swapping sides. And when Xhaka switched over to the right, he had a lot more access to Ozil. And as a result, in the Everton game, Xhaka passed to Ozil just 7 times. In this game, 24 times. So I'm curious if you saw that switching and if you think that might be a solution to help vary the build-up because our left side bias gets balanced out a little based on whichever side Xhaka is occupying.
Yeah, I think that definitely played a role. I also did notice that both of them were kind of taking turns as the person that dropped deep to play between the center backs to collect and build play.
You mean Torreira versus Xhaka?
Exactly,
yeah,
both of those
agreed.
two.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to kind of see them both taking turns in the role. I think that varies the looks that we're giving the defenders, so they can't really just key on, all right, this is the one thing we're going to do, and we know exactly where they're going to play. So it can kind of work off the patterns a little bit more so they can anticipate the move. So if they're switching, I think that's positive. And I think it is good to get more people involved. Having such a big left side bias isn't great. You need to be able to really balance out the team, and I think that's partially just the way the team is built. Xhaka gets so much of the ball and he's left-footed, so everything goes left. So moving him or giving him the chance to move to the right, I think will help balance out which way the attacks come down. So that's good to see. Yeah,
and I have to say, I mean, I love Nacho and I think he's a great player and all that, but I definitely think Bellerin is a special footballer and we are not getting much out of him in the attack right now. I mean, the astonishing thing is Ozil, who played a big portion of the game, presumably as our right side forward. We've been tracking the statistic all season versus Mkhitaryan playing and giving like 14, 15 passes in a game to Bellerin. Ozil passed to Bellerin 1 time in this match, and I believe Bellerin passed to him 4 times. So almost no activity between your right-sided fullback and your right-sided or nominally right-sided forward. That doesn't seem like a good way to vary your attack. And maybe there's a tactic there. Maybe there's something that Emery is trying to do by switching to a left-sided bias. Maybe it's to try to get Aubameyang involved. It certainly isn't working. And Paul, I mean, when we talk about Aubameyang and Lacazette, one thing that everybody seems to agree, whether you're in the camp that Aubameyang should start up front, or you're in the camp that Lacazette clearly should because of his output and he has earned the right to keep that place, everybody believes that when these two are playing together, they should play together because they have this great understanding and they look for each other and they link up well. But that's kind of a mirage. It really hasn't been happening. And in fact, in this game, Aubameyang passed to Lacazette one time and Lacazette to Aubameyang one time. So surely, if they're going to play together, we need to see that involvement for it to make any sense. I mean, are you coming to any further conclusions about this Aubameyang left wing situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think it still needs to be trialed with our two CMs and with somebody else on the right side, for example. But I've never bought the love fest between the two strikers, which I believe is real. I just don't think it buys you anything on the football pitch. I think it buys you something in the squad and the mood and the atmosphere, and it's made Emery's job a lot easier to incorporate the strikers and to try different things without them throwing huffies. So I think it's bought him a lot of buy-in. The reality is, on the pitch, strikers should make their decisions on only one basis: what's the most likely to get them or their team a goal, not how does this guy feel or how well are we getting on or any of that shit. That's why so many frenemies have played striker together or played in a team together. You don't have to get on. In fact, you could argue it can be just as counterproductive. So I've never really bought it. So tactically, our good friend Calvin on the Twitters had a phrase which I think he termed a weak-sided player, and Aubameyang is kind of the non-ball side player. He's the guy you want ghosting in to get on the end of the cutback, and actually we scored from 2 cutbacks in this game. And when we had Mkhitaryan in the team, we had cutbacks too. And I think that's what we're missing. If we don't have a player over on the right side or on the left side, if we switch everything around, if we don't have the Mkhitaryan role, we got no cutbacks. And I don't know what you're going to do with Aubameyang. He's going to play it out from midfield. He's going to pick it up and dribble his way from the left side. That's not what he does. And there's a lot of topics tied up in that, but Iwobi comes on, and there's the whole discussion about what did he really contribute. Well, quite a lot once he got switched over to the Mkhitaryan spot, and we scored 2 Mkhitaryan goals, and they looked kind of easy. Now, part of that maybe because Watford had exhausted themselves to some point, but we were through them like a knife through butter on 80 minutes when Iwobi impersonated Mkhitaryan, and 2 cutback goals, bang it in. That could as easily have been Aubameyang coming in on either one of those, and that's where he makes sense from the left.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can get to the goals in more detail as we go, but I mean, I do think, having just mentioned the lack of involvement and use of Bellerin, and that first goal comes from him finally getting a runner on his side to go beyond the defense, and he plays Iwobi into that space, and the cutback leads to the goal, or the cross. I mean, it's not so much a cutback. And
Iwobi's run is identical to a Mkhitaryan run.
Exactly. It's the kind of run a sort of wide forward makes, in that half space, in that channel, that Ozil doesn't make. And when the ball goes out to Bellerin, on the rare chance he gets it when Ozil's playing out there, what you can see is he doesn't have anyone else to play it to. So he pulls it back and winds up going to the defender or going back to the midfield. So, we'll come to the goals in a bit, but I want to sort of cover the game in a little more chronological way. So, Scott, obviously one of the big moments here in this match is the Cech injury and Leno coming in. I thought Cech had done really well. As always, his distribution was poor. I mean, it is poor. And so I'm curious to get your sort of early takes on Leno's performance in his first Premier League match.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that, the one thing that we were always a little bit worried about when we brought him up is his ability to shot stop. And I thought that actually in this match he did a really good job, making saves. Both him and Cech had a lot of opportunities, and that's worrying.
The free kick save was extraordinary. Was it from a free kick?
It was, yeah. So it was the free kick, and Dini was right there and redirected it towards the corner. And in that situation, you have almost no time to react to that. And yeah, getting that one around the post was really good. I had Watford's shots on target at 2.7. So basically, between the two keepers, they saved almost 3 goals, which is really impressive. So I was very happy to see that. Looking at the passing numbers, I have Leno with a passing value added of negative 0.06, but Czech was a negative 0.011. So neither of them really stood out passing the ball. I do remember before Czech went off that I think his long passing here, I'm just pulling it up right now, was absolutely atrocious, which is a concern, and I'm hoping that with the new guy behind the goal, things will be better.
It's been a feature of us all season, though. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Jay Leno. Isn't that what the commentator called him?
Yeah. Yeah, Czech
or the other guy
was 2 of 13 on his long passes. Not great at all. Just 6 of 17 on his forward passes. Overall, you really want your keeper to do better than that, because otherwise the ball is just coming right back. Before you even have a chance to set your defense. Leno, when he came on, he was 12 of 18 overall passing. His long passes, he was 3 of 8, so still not great, but at least a little bit better. Less attempts and completed one more, so that's always good. His overall passing, I think, is a little bit better. I'd like to see him, build a connection with his center backs and the midfielders to be able to pass a little bit better. Watford did seem to be pushing up quite a bit. They weren't necessarily pressing super hard, but they weren't sitting back, so some of these passes were under pressure. So it's a little bit hard to draw too much of a conclusion from one half, but I think that's going to be an improvement over Czech.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. I certainly think that Czech had done enough to hold on to this role, but now is Leno's chance. And the manager was asked. Let me rephrase. The coach was asked after the game about Leno coming in, and he basically said that he's impressed with Leno, but that he hadn't earned his way in, and now he has his chance to do that. So we'll see what he does from here. But the hope certainly, because I don't think you can do a whole lot better than Czech has done in terms of shot stopping, but the hope is that his superior use of the ball will help with our build-up and our fluency. The other thing I think we've seen from Leno is a willingness to be a bit of a sweeper keeper, and Czech is less adept at that. So, that may help snuff out counterattack or long ball opportunities that we can be vulnerable to with a high line. I will say Leno had one little worrying attempt to come get a ball where I think it was actually Mustafi who kind of bodied him out of the way, unsurprisingly. So, we'll have to see how he does physically with balls in the air and set pieces and things like that, because I think Czech has been pretty good there. But overall, a good start for him. And we're going to need him, because if anything, right now it looks like we're going to continue to give up big chances. And the reason for that is our defending. Paul, it is maybe the best news about Socrates' injury is that it's given a chance for Holding to come in and show that he can do a job, because the man who continually cannot do a job is Shkodran Mustafi. His comedy stylings are certainly laughable, but they are not enjoyable. And I think this was another performance for him to get in the sea over at least many, many times. At this point, is the good news, I mean, presuming that Socrates' injury is not long-term, and I certainly wouldn't expect it to be, this was kind of a surprise absence, that Holding has come in, shown he can do a job, and potentially created a situation where Emery could feel confident dropping Mustafi when Socrates is back?
Yeah, you can make that case. I did think Holding was really good in this game. I was a little critical of his some agricultural passes and clearances the previous the Carabao Cup tie, but I thought he was very, very good in this. Looked like he'd grown into the role again. So he's definitely put down a marker there. Not that I have a totally different view on Mustafi, but I didn't actually think it was totally terrible in this. He had a couple of moments, a couple of Mustafis, as we call them. I think the problem is he does a lot of good stuff, and he actually suits our style for the most part when he's not fucking up. So I don't think our defense is terrible. And I think part of the reason it's not terrible is also because of Mustafi. He does a lot of good things. His distribution in this wasn't great, and he Mustafi'd a couple of moments. But outside of the fuck ups, I thought he was pretty good.
The problem
So
is
I
much
don't
like a
think he's-
goalkeeper, Paul.
Yeah, go
Isn't
ahead.
it the case that
Sure.
as a center back, you'd almost rather have a 6 out of 10 center back who doesn't make killer mistakes than an 8 out of 10 center back who makes 2 killer mistakes a game? I mean, you think about
Yeah.
Loris Karius at Liverpool, right? I have no idea if he was a good keeper for them or not in general. I just know that he made some very high profile screw ups that made him untenable as a keeper there, right? So I mean, isn't that the problem?
Yeah, and it talks to kind of a steady, steely mentality in your defense. You want to know you can rely on somebody. You want the Saul Campbell fucked up a few things. You go back and watch highlights with Tony Adams in it. He fucked up plenty, but there was a mentality that came with it, a veneer of we don't fuck up. That Mustafi has kind of the other piece of it. He probably has more than his share of Mustafis, and he just makes you feel a bit jittery. It's kind of like the Almunia factor, right? It's not that Almunia never did some good goalkeeping along the way. He had his issues, and more than that, he made people feel nervous. And I think Mustafi has the effect of not only Mustafiing a couple each game, but he gives people the Mustafis, including the crowd and those around him. But I just don't think he's this huge calamity. It's the way it is. This is how we talk about footballers. But in reality, I don't think he's the huge calamity we talk about. And our defence was, for the most part, pretty good, though it called on the keepers. The other thing when we talk about the big chances they had, I actually felt there was almost none of those chances they should have scored. I think the keepers, partly because the keepers, I think keepers did really well, or they saved shit. So kind of.
I mean, was it Fortune who misses the one-on-one situation? I mean, that's a spin away from being a goal. Yeah. Yeah,
but that's a tough one. I mean, and Leno comes out well and he stays upright. He doesn't actually have a lot of. I think that's a tougher one than Lacazette's in the first half, because get it over the top of the keeper, you're clear. But Leno comes out big. He stays upright and covers a lot of the goals. So I think overall our defense was pretty good. And with the volume of bigger chances they had, sure, they probably should have got a goal or two. But on an individual basis, in each case, I don't think we dodged too many bullets.
No, the only thing I'll say, and we know this, you look at the best teams, especially Manchester City, and they do sometimes give up good chances, but overall, their shot suppression is unrivaled, and that the best way to be a good team long-term is suppress shots. I mean, Watford did have 14 shots and 6 big chances, and so, whether you think individually any of them are missable, over time, you'd like to be better at shot suppression and better at chance suppression than that, even if you suspect that those chances are savable, because the finishing pixie will eventually go against you. Right now, she's going for us. So
I think that's very fair. And let me just quickly then, you've helped me get to where my real point was, which was I don't think we fucked anything up in defense, right? Our problem was we, as a team, allowed them way too many opportunities. It ain't the defenders, it's the team. It's our losing control of the game as a team.
And this is where Mustafi drives me crazy. And I've used the word coward before, and I know some people have taken me up on that, so that's too strong a thing to say of someone. Well, not just you, other people. Many people say terrible things to me constantly, and that was certainly a time when they did. And it's almost always warranted, I should mention. But in the case of Mustafi, I think what I'm trying to get to at the bottom of this is I can't help but feel that Mustafi makes the lazy choice rather than doing the work. He'll dive in rather than run. He'll commit a foul rather than contesting in a more physical way. And a great example is the free kick he gives away where he goes over the top. You know the one I'm talking about that almost results in a goal?
Yep.
That is just a brainless, lazy thing to do, because he wasn't going to be favored to win the ball, and he was going to maybe get turned or maybe have to, be physical in a challenge there. And so what does he do? He just gives away a free kick instead. There was the one where he goes to ground and he misses, and Holding thankfully comes in and cleans up. Maybe coward is the wrong word. Maybe it's lazy, because so let me ask you, Paul. how do you explain a player who consistently chooses what seems to be the ill-advised but easier option rather than putting in the work? That's all it is. It's staying on your feet. It's running with the man. It's staying touch tight. It's not switching off. The work and concentration it takes to be a professional center back.
He plays to his strength. He's actually very good at going in there and nipping the ball. And sometimes most of the time it works out for him. He slides in, gets the ball, knocks it away. He's nipping at their heels. He's proactive. He gets ahead of them. The free kick he gave away, all right, it's stupid, but I can show you pictures of any fucking defender, from Tony Adams to Saul
but
Campbell,
again, right, but the fact that other people have done ill-advised things, it's kind of whataboutism, isn't it?
Is because our centre-backs came out saying, we're not going to take shit from Deeney and co. We're going to be in their faces. We're going to be aggressive. Sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong. You'll see a Granit Xhaka in seasons gone by giving away a yellow here and there. Those are the players. The centre-backs and the DM are the guys. They're the only beefy guys on the team. They're the guys who are going to get stuck in a bit, and sometimes they get it wrong. They make the wrong call.
I mean this with no
that's
disrespect.
The wrong call.
I think you were giving me a perfectly valid theory that doesn't fit the details and facts of the player, because this is a guy who I've seen hang a lazy leg in the box, slide in when sliding in is totally uncalled for, and he wasn't going to get it. I've seen him dive in.
I'm not saying he's a perfect defender.
Right, but
I'm
what
not
I'm
saying he
is,
doesn't Mustafi it.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is
there is nothing about this performance to me that is lazy or cowardly or taking the easy route. They're up for this. They know Watford is aggressive. They know Watford gets more turnovers in their attacking half than any other team, and they know they're going to be in their face, and they know that Deeney's waiting to tell them they have no balls at the end of the game. The problem was not that he was not up for it or not getting stuck in or being lazy or taking the easy way. It's that maybe he was a little too amped. So again, I don't want to be Mustafi's great defender, but unfortunately, it's the nature of these things. Somebody's either great or they're shit, and I don't think he's either. I think he's in the middle. He has some liabilities and he has many strengths, but as we kind of said, we discount the strengths. He gave us a lot throughout the game in terms of nipping in, being proactive, getting in their faces, being aggressive, and he's a small guy, so sometimes he's going to expose himself. Like in this situation, he went in too heavy because he's smaller.
I guess you know what, we're going to have to agree to disagree, just because I think it's not just the tackles too. It's the careless passes that go out in a touch for no reason, under no pressure. I guess, look, and why don't we bring Scott and get sort of someone to settle the debate. But what I will say, sometimes with some of these players, I kind of wonder, like, if a neutral listened to this, if they'd be like, really, you guys are even debating this? You know what I mean? Like, we see our players so much and we internalize so much of what they do, and we want to see the best in them, that sometimes I think we dig out nuggets of quality in a player that, to someone who's maybe not as invested, would see just as probably not being good enough. I mean, Scott, why don't you settle the debate?
And almost all neutrals go with narrative. Sorry, Scott.
No, that's true. And it's also because they just don't watch as much. But I think we are guilty of doing the opposite in some cases, which is breathing too much life into. Yeah, exactly. And I am never going to be guilty of that, thankfully. Scott, for you, the Mustafi mistakes, the Mustafi play generally, I mean, is this a case of not seeing the good in a player and overemphasizing his flaws, or do you tend to agree with me more that the mistakes he does make are of the unacceptable variety from a player who has no brain, should be fired out of a cannon into the sun?
I think that my stance, and I think I want to stay consistent here, is that Mustafi is the kind of player that can do really good things, have really good games, but also when some of those risky moves that he does don't come off, he can be bafflingly bad. I think that this situation, this game, was much more of a situation where he did the bad things. The one that really sticks out in my mind, you already mentioned the foul that led to the Deeney chance, but then he also has the place where he tries to play an offside, or he just loses his marker on success. He just basically lets him run by him, and it's a great situation where Holding is aware that his partner has no brain and sees the play coming and is super quick to get across and makes a very important block, because that was a pretty simple little pass that really just cut open the defense, and you really hope that something like that wouldn't happen. So that was something that was really obvious. And then even there was a chance for Andre Gray where Deeney has the ball. He moves it. They had it right at the edge of the 18-yard box. They play a little bit of a combination. Deeney drops a little bit further and then plays a through ball right between Mustafi and Bellerin, where, again, Mustafi is just not really able to track his player. His player goes to make a run, but I think that one was a little bit hard on him to say that was his fault. That was just a really good pass and a great little move that they did. But there's just so many of those little situations that he does where, he makes plays where if it comes off, it's amazing. If it doesn't, he looks really bad, and he puts the rest of his defense under enormous pressure. And I think that's where you're talking about, he can have the 8 out of 10 games, but he can have a lot of the 4 out of 10 games. And honestly, as a defender, you'd rather have someone who might be a little bit more limited, but gives you consistently good defense instead of someone who can be amazing or absolutely atrocious.
Yeah. I like to be measured in my response to things, give players a chance, try to look at the issue and the player in 360-degree perspective. Having said that, and being distracted by the astounding amount of microphone noise that Paul is generating right now,
sorry about that. We're tunneling into KSE Enterprises to kidnap Cranky's wife.
Oh, great. Let's put that on Mike. That's perfect. No, but I think with Mustafi, I have to admit, I have reached a point where the mistakes he makes now are just so glaring to me, and I feel that not trying another center back partnership is a little bit negligent at this point. And it's not to say that Mustafi is a useless footballer, although I'd be happy to say it if someone asked me. I just think we have reached the point where we probably have to try something different. And also, if we want to have this meritocracy we talk about, I think you can make an argument that Mustafi has played his way to a little bit of a timeout. Let's take a timeout. We'll take a quick break, and then we're going to finish just 10 or 15 quick minutes on the important moment of the match, which we've saved the best for last, the Iwobi influence, that swap, how it impacted the game, and whether it yet again is a way forward. By the way, if you have not yet signed up for The Athletic, you need to do it. Just do it. James just wrote an awesome article on Mkhitaryan and the importance of getting him involved and the risks of leaving him out. I have one on the Aubameyang-Lacazette conundrum coming out this week. TheAthletic.com is a subscription site, so I will tell you that, but no autoplay ads, no advertisements at all whatsoever. Most of the websites out there right now that are ad-supported are just really tough to read because of that, and because a lot of it's clickbait. 5 things we learned from this, transfer rumors, just the worst kind of content. And, there are very few exceptions to that. The Athletic has some of the best writers out there. Graham Hunter, James, I mentioned Gunnerblog. I am writing for them, for better or worse. The managing director of StatsBomb is writing for them. I mean, there's just so many great writers. And if you like other sports as well, 700 articles a week across the world of sports. So something really special there. If you are interested in the football coverage, George Qureshi was the head of the Howler. He is the managing editor for the football coverage over there. And if you use the link, theathletic.com/Arsenal Vision, that's it. Theathletic.com/Arsenal Vision, you'll get a free trial, first of all. So you can just go read James' article. You can read mine if you want, see what you think. You'll also get 30% off if you continue. So give them a shot, see what you think. We'll take a break, tell you about some beer that you absolutely should drink and sign up for because it's the best. And when we come back, we'll talk Alex Iwobi. But right now, it's time to tell you about our favorite monthly craft beer discovery club. In fact, it is the world's most popular craft beer discovery club, beer52.com. You're going to want to go to beer52.com/vision right now. The reason you're going to want to do that is you're going to get a free case of craft beer. A free case of craft beer. You're even going to get a copy of Ferment Magazine and a snack. So you're getting all of that for free. Just pay £2.95 shipping, and you'll be upgraded to free next day shipping, which is great. 8 incredible craft beers, a magazine, a snack, no-brainer. And I know all about no-brainers. Trust me, I have no brain. In any event, this is a chance for you to discover some of the best beers from around the world, and right now you get to take advantage of the Raise the Bar competition, Beer 52's search for the UK's best new small brewers in partnership with the London Craft Beer Festival. So you'll enjoy the likes of Unity's 7% Export Stout, Boxcar's Belgian IPA, and West by 3's Mothership with Passion Fruit. It's only available in the UK, which makes me very sad, but if you live in the UK, it should make you very happy, because by going to beer52.com/vision, not only do you make us happy podcasters, but you make yourself a happy owner of free craft beer. And so that is obvious. By the way, one thing we love about beer52.com, they have a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. So you know you are going with a very trustworthy company. Again, the most popular monthly craft beer delivery service. So take advantage of it. Beer52.com/vision. Go there right now. Get your free case of craft beer. You're going to love it. Okay, we're back. Took the break at the very tail end of the pod, which is a little unusual, but I realized I had forgot to do it. So there it is. That's the exact reason why we did it. But it's because the conversation was flowing so beautifully, and hopefully it will flow beautifully with this last little bit, which is important because it was probably the moment that changed the game. Paul, I'm actually kind of curious about this. There was a decent amount of debate online. Some people are saying that the claim that Iwobi's influence changed the game is pure narrative, that when he came in for the first few minutes, actually Watford had the better run of play. They created the better chances. But ultimately, I cannot escape the conclusion that Iwobi's influence, not just his personal influence, but just the fact of him being on the pitch, moving Ozil more central, creating a little more of that balance, and then eventually Welbeck coming in to enhance that even further, is really what turned the game. For me, some of it is Iwobi, and some of it is just the way it influences the balance of the system and getting players into more natural positions. So for you, how much is narrative? How much is influence? What did you make of Iwobi's performance?
So when he first came on, he was on the left. He put in the only thing he really did in his first 7 minutes or so was he put in a cross from the left hand side. It was actually a really good cross, but to nobody, right into the 6-yard box. And then he was a non-presence. We've always generally liked Iwobi from the left, but we weren't playing in their final third. So he was basically with us falling back. In fact, we lost momentum in the game. It was before he came on. We kind of had them on the rack a little bit in a semicircle around their box, but we couldn't get into their box. So I'm sure the manager thought we need somebody to run at them and to make some runs, but it ain't how it played out. We basically got pushed back into our half, and Iwobi didn't get to contribute much on the left. You could see the manager, the coach, scratching his head, digging his finger into his ear, which is his Yogi Love poker tell. And so he makes his second play, which is to bring on Welbeck, and switches Iwobi to the right-hand side. And hey presto, within moments, Iwobi is doing the Mkhitaryan thing as we counter them twice in 3 minutes and score. And I give him a lot of credit, but it's more of a tactical thing than a personnel thing. He's one of the guys, apparently, who can, from the right-hand side on his right foot, he's being more aggressive this season. He seems charged up. He seems more physical. He seems fitter. He talked about the manager telling him to just go for it, not worry about things, just be aggressive. And he gets on there. I mean, when he first came in, he looked like a goal scorer for us, whatever it was, a couple of seasons ago. Attacking, taking shots, scoring goals in his first few matches. And then he seemed to take on more of a role mentality. And in this, he went for it. Now, they were tired, and that's the benefit of them having come at us for so long and us having conceded. But, we cut through them, as I said before, like a knife through butter on that right-hand side doing the Mkhitaryan thing. And I don't care if it's Iwobi or Mkhitaryan on the right-hand side, but somebody you can do cutbacks and balance out the other lads seemed to be what made all the difference here.
Yeah, I cannot look beyond these changes that Emery is making that are turning the game without wondering how long it will be before Emery himself decides that these are the moves that need to be made from the start. So, I mean, Scott, I thought Iwobi did really well. I mean, I realize that there are some people that think that's narrative, but I think, obviously his influence in the first goal is there. He makes the run that would not have been made by Ozil had the switch not been made. And I think that is absolutely critical. For the second goal, he's in there as well. So, I mean, is his influence the difference, or is it simply the fact of having a player more natural in those spaces for you?
Yeah, so it's hard a little bit to disentangle the difference between Welbeck and Iwobi coming on. I thought both of them really just gave more balance to the team. I know one of the things that I've harped on is that having true wide players in wide positions is good, and the team plays better when you have people playing in their right positions. It's one of those tough ones where, you want your best players on the pitch, but you also want people to be in their natural positions where they can succeed. So I think both Iwobi and Welbeck are comfortable out on the right. Welbeck might be more of a natural striker, but he's very comfortable on the wing. He's played the wing quite a bit in his career. So I think both of them really just gave better balance to the team. One of the things that I noticed with Iwobi is that he was able to make more combinations with Ozil than Ramsey did. Ramsey, the entire time that he was on the pitch, only made 3 passes to Ozil. So that was 63 minutes. But during Iwobi's time on the pitch, he was able to do 4 in, about a third of the amount of time. So that was very positive. He did a really good job. It is tough to say that Arsenal were the better team when he was on the sheet or on the field, because almost all of those big chances that Arsenal gave up were with Iwobi on the pitch. So, if you look at his plus minus, I guess, if you were to say that, it wasn't great, but I think that the balance he brought to the team in the attacking sense was very positive.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think it would be easy to overlook Welbeck, because obviously not the longest of cameos and maybe not a player that we see as being super influential for us. But when he's come on, he admittedly mostly against weaker opposition, but here in the league, he has made a difference. It's his sort of, I guess you can call it a pass. He has a heavy touch and then he recovers it with a sliding touch to start the move for Ozil's goal. But Danny Welbeck has made a difference too. I mean, have we maybe overlooked his influence, and is he someone who the manager might start to call on more often?
I think so. I think that might be. He's such a pivotal player. I know we talked about this, I think, after the Europa League match, where he does so many things right, but he doesn't quite have the finishing or the final ball that is really frustrating. But he really does well, I think, in that super sub role. I think that would actually be a very good situation to use him in. I don't necessarily want to start him from the beginning, but I think he can really come in and change a game when Arsenal need a goal. And I thought that was a good move. He adds a little bit different to the attack. He's more of an aerial player than our other 2 strikers that we have. He can play out wide. He can play as a center striker. So he's a good, useful player to have around, and I like him.
I don't disagree with any of that. Paul, would you like to disagree with any of that?
No, I think I think we talked about it earlier in the pod season, but him and Iwobi, they got legs, especially now that Iwobi looks like he can go for 90 minutes. And I think Emery is going to love them by the end of the season, what they bring. And the other thing that, as we talk about this period late in the game, the other thing that stuck out was Ozil taking the armband, and we saw him chase back, kind of save the day around 90 minutes, grab the ball, play it upfield, and a little before that he does a long run to chase down the keeper to block a shot they're kicking out. And just generally, it was much more energized, enthusiastic, especially in the second half. It was the first time I thought Ozil's actually enjoying this. He had a tough game. I mean, it was a struggle. His numbers weren't, in terms of involvement, it grew as the game went on, but it was still, outside of the goal, it was still a grind for him to really get a hold of the game. But I just thought his whole demeanor, especially you could say, especially after Ramsey went, but I don't want to. It's not to personalize it, but it was just when the game began to change, he kind of threw his shoulders back and kind of grabbed hold of it as a technical leader, at least on the pitch. And I thought, for me, this was a really big game for Ozil beyond the goal. It seemed like the first time in a while where I thought he's establishing himself. He's making the play. And I think pairing up Xhaka and Ozil in this game, when you compare how closely he and Xhaka kind of aligned on either side and found each other and looked for each other, in combination with Monreal, who was our second biggest passer, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And Torreira seemed to free Xhaka up to do his thing. I thought there was a much better balance this time around with the two DMs or central midfielders. I don't remember Xhaka getting caught on the ball, even though they were kind of trying to press and harry. So I thought there was a lot of things in and around Ozil that were pretty good. I think we finally may be cracking the midfield part of it. Now we just got to rationalize who's going to be the attacking three.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, the one thing about Torreira is we were all desperate for Torreira to get in there, and he's gotten in there. And admittedly, we continue to win, but I don't know that it's necessarily fixed what we were kind of hoping it would fix in terms of our openness. Paul, I know you've got to go, so Paul's on Twitter at Pausing in My Pants. Thanks, Paul. And I believe he is already gone. That is how urgently he had to go. But that's okay because we were wrapping up anyway. Scott, just before we say goodbye to you, I think one thing that is interesting is the coach after the game about Iwobi said, I think it was Iwobi who said this about himself, that the coach has told him he wants him to stay closer to the box. But a big thing he said is not to get so down on himself if he makes a mistake, to just keep going. One thing I definitely believe about Iwobi is he was a player who wore his heart on his sleeve, and if he missed a pass or missed an opportunity, he really got down on himself in games with snowball. And that is a big thing for Iwobi, I think, just not playing with that kind of burden on his shoulders. And if he's closer to the box, he doesn't have to make those long recovery runs that I don't think are necessarily his strength. He has the physicality now, the body size to be imposing in the attacking third, but he's never been the fittest in terms of covering the pitch box to box. So I mean, are these really the two keys to maybe unlocking better performances from Iwobi, keeping him more in the final third and just trying to lift some of that pressure he puts on himself of being perfect all the time?
Yeah, because I think when you're put in the position of a attacking wide player, more often than not, things are not going to come off. It's
look at
hard
Mkhitaryan.
position. Exactly. So you got to just have the confidence to the last 3 didn't come off, but this time it's going to, because those are if you make a mistake out there, usually it's not that big of a deal. The opponents are far away from your goal. They're on the wing. You can use that situation to press them and, reset your defense. Not that big of a deal usually if, you lose the ball out there. It's not like losing it in the middle of the halfway mark. And then, when things do come off over there, you're really going to make the defense scramble. You're going to be able to get in a position to have a cutback, or you're going to be able to cut in onto, so if he's coming in from the left, cut onto your right foot and have a chance at goal. So it is an important thing to, not dwell on, oh, I missed the pass. It's all right. Well, when the next one comes, I'll do it again. I think that is a great thing from him. And because he has the skills to be able to do it, it's just I think it's a mental portion like you talked about and like he talked about. So I think that is positive. And if he's able to do that, he could be a player that we really use.
Yeah, I think physically he has the capabilities. He makes mistakes, but I mean, you look at Mkhitaryan, who is a guy who will misplace a 3-yard pass for no reason whatsoever, and then make a brilliant assist or goal thanks to his individual skill, and he doesn't seem to care or be weighed down by the mistakes he makes. And I think that Iwobi can learn a lot from that, and if that's something that the coach is working on with him, I think that's great. I think keeping him closer to the final third, it sort of mirrors something that we've heard Sarri saying about Hazard at Chelsea, saying that he doesn't want him to do so much work outside of the final third. He wants him to stay closer to goal and get the end product. And I'm not saying that Iwobi is Eden Hazard, who may arguably be the best player in the league right now, but it certainly seems that what Emery is teaching Iwobi to do seems to be more of a role like what Sarri wants Hazard to do. Stay closer to the box, focus on your end product, get more goals and assists. Let the team around you do the other work. And I am totally here for that because I think that will get the best out of Iwobi. Now, you may say that's not what we need. Well, if that's not what we need, you need another player. I think that's where you're going to get the best from Iwobi. It is a challenge because right now Aubameyang is essentially a zero in that role. I mean, this was an anonymous performance. I don't think he can continue to start. He is my favorite player in the team. I'll just come out and say it. I think he's a player I always wanted at Arsenal, and now he's here, and he's playing in a role that doesn't suit him, and it's not working for him. But even I have to acknowledge, if it's going to be Lacazette up front, and I'm done waging war over that, I mean, it is what it is, then I think Aubameyang has to be dropped and be a rotational option. I mean, Scott, is that what this boils down to for you, that no matter how much you love Aubameyang, no matter how much you may believe he is a better striker than Lacazette, whether you believe it or not, if this is the role the manager sees for him, it's probably best that he just goes to the bench for a while.
Yeah, we've talked about this so many times. It's tough. I feel like if Ramsey's not going to be used as part of the double pivot, I think that his best role is probably in a 4-3-3 as one of the two more advanced of the midfielders. So you can start a little bit deeper and is used there. I don't think that he works well in the 10 role in the 4-2-3-1. I think he could probably do a job on the right-hand side, as we saw under Wenger. He did a good job out there, but he doesn't want to do that. And I think at this situation with him not signing a contract, that he isn't really going to be a person that you really need to mess around with to make things work. If he's able to, fit into the roles that we have, great. But I think that, Arsenal need to, stick with the people that are going to be here long term. So if Emery wants to do the 4-2-3-1, I think that you have to go with Ozil in the 10, Granit Xhaka and Torreira and the double pivot. Then you have, you're picking your striker. Right now, Lacazette is playing really well. He's getting into good positions to shoot. He's being involved in the build-up, which is really nice to see. I still would like to see Aubameyang in the center forward role, but I can see the argument right now on form that Lacazette is the better player. Then you have to pick the two wide spots. So do you want true wide players? Are you going to shoehorn a player in there? One of the things that I find interesting is that in the second half, Aubameyang did go to the right, and I know he did play for Dortmund on the right quite a bit instead of the left, as he's played for Arsenal. So maybe that's something to try to see if maybe you can get going from there, so you don't have to drop him right away. So maybe that's an option. Then you have Iwobi left, Aubameyang right. Maybe that's the team that is able to get a little bit more balance. I don't know. I still think that leaves Bellerin isolated. I think we're still in that situation where we're putting round pegs into square holes and not quite working. So it's a work in progress, but I think that, at least from this, I think our conclusion is if we're going to stick 4-2-3-1, that Ramsey might be the odd one out, especially with his contract situation kind of saying that he's not going to be with the club long term.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I am obviously thrilled that Project 24 rolls on, thrilled that we are winning. Maybe sometimes expectation is the issue, right? I thought that we would be a dynamic attacking team that had this free-flowing, unstoppable presence in the attacking half as we worked through our issues defensively, and that just hasn't been the case. Having said that, we're not conceding goals at the level that I would have expected. We're conceding chances and expected goals, but we're not conceding the goals, and we're winning the games. So sometimes you just have to recalibrate your expectations to match what you're seeing, and recognize that winning is fun, and we continue to win, and that's great. We go visit Karabag. We will Karabags to Azerbaijan on Thursday, and I expect that there will be heavy rotation. A lot of the big players won't even make the trip, but we will know that in time. So later this week, and in fact, I've been saying later this week, given that there's a Thursday game, maybe, just maybe, we'll have to push to the following week when there's an international break to do that in the Spotlight episode, now that I mention it, on Mesut Ozil. So while I think we might try to hammer it out this week, given that we have to do a pod Thursday for the Europa League game, and that we have an international break after that, if it's okay with everyone, maybe we'll just push the Mesut Ozil in the Spotlight to the following week, so you have something to listen to during the international break, which would be fun. In any event, Scott's on Twitter at @O_that_crap. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I am hopping on a flight very, very soon, which is why I had to schedule this recording at an unorthodox time, which is why Clive and Tim couldn't be here. They wanted to be, and we are all the lesser. As you can see, just by virtue of my not speaking English properly, we are all less for not having them on the podcast. So my apologies to them, but they will be on again in the near future. So in any event, thanks for sticking with us despite those challenges and despite my challenges, and the panel is still wonderful and we appreciate them. In any event, we will talk to you after Arsenal 10. Carry a bag now.